classes. So that's like the one exception I can think of.
Good stuff. All right. Well, it is now 9:06, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Happy eve of orientation, as that's going to get started sooner than we realize. My name is Samuel Lloyd. I'm doing advisor training, at least for today. We're going to go ahead and get started. So this is our agenda. We're going to go over the orientation calendar and the schedule, talk about some key steps to orientation advising, some policies to be aware of that don't necessarily show up very often when supporting our continuing students, some essentials and systems, engagement opportunities, how we can support high school AA admits, and then how we can support our incoming transfer students as their orientation experience looks a little bit different. But first, you are all continued to encourage, you're all invited to use the chat option to ask questions, make comments. This training is more for you than it is for me, so I want to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident going forward. So the orientation calendar, this typically goes from May through early July-ish. There are different codes, just to make sure that you're all aware. We have FTIC or LDT orientation, that stands for first time in college or lower division transfer orientations. And then we have UDT for upper division transfers. There are some special sessions for CARE, I-Pre-Depart, which is the first year abroad or first semester abroad programs for international programs, and then athletics as well. And then just to note, for our Summer C FTIC admits, they will also need fall schedules. They register about halfway through July. I don't necessarily get the history in terms of why they register late, but they'll be registering for Summer C when they go through orientation, and their orientations are sooner. They're the first ones that take place. But we just need to be mindful that when we are working with a Summer C admit, we're going to be building a schedule for Summer C and for fall. Okay, good chat stuff. Sorry, I see that blowing up. Seems resolved. Great. The overview of orientation. So the student has to complete the starting at state module, and that's going to be the terminology we're going to use. Previously, it was pre-orientation modules. They need to complete these to learn more about the essential information. Basically, they can access that through their homepage. They're provided the link to register and get set up once they are admitted. They can then register. After they complete it, they register for a date for new null orientation, and then they go through new null orientation, and at the end of orientation is when they register for their classes. So day one, and you'll see that this is separated between students and families. Ideally, we do this to ensure that the student gets all of their questions answered and gets the kind of experiences that we want out of orientation. We want them to start building a sense of community and a sense of connection to the university. And we also know that families are their vested stakeholders and that they have their own questions. And we want to make sure that they are getting their questions answered in their own right without having to overlap what their students are going through or maybe stymie that sense of connection. Day two, you'll see that students, once they check in, right at 10 a.m. until 2 p.m., they're going to have academic advising. Now, not every student's going to come in at 10 a.m. It just depends on how your department has more or less divided up students. I believe the number is about 25 students would be capped per department. So that way you're not going to have more than 25 students all show up in your Zoom room at 10 a.m. It'll be broken up to say, some are going to be at 10 a.m. and then the other half will likely be at 12 p.m. And then again, you'll see families do have some other things to attend to. We'll talk about what happens if family or parents, guardians, other what we'll call vested stakeholders. We'll talk about what happens if they show up in the advising room. And then from 2 to 3 p.m., students will have the opportunity to go through Knoll to Knoll and ask the experts, and again, connect with each other and with orientation leaders. And then at 3 p.m., they will be learning about course registration. And then from 3:30 to 5 p.m., optional, they will be going through course registration. We'll have various UGS helpers, orientation leaders will be helping with these registration labs, I guess what we'll call them, just to ensure that the student feels supported and comfortable as they are going through our schedule assistant platform to more or less build that first semester schedule that we've all built for them. And then you'll see families have from 2 to 3:15 their opportunity to, again, ask the experts and get all of their remaining questions answered. And then we'll have first year Fridays. I believe this is every Friday during orientation windows, basically just to give students another connection touch point. Breakout sessions will be from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., students only will see the Ignite Your Knoll experience. There are, and I believe, well, we'll have Heather potentially talk about this in a little bit. Heather Bishop will talk about if students need to change their majors during orientation. It takes place during first year Fridays, which is a great segue. I know Heather and Robin have to get going shortly, so I have them moved up earlier in the schedule to talk about supporting our incoming transfer students.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for letting us talk to you today. We do have a lot of transfer students coming through orientation. They separate them out, upper division transfer is its own thing, and then lower division transfer goes in with FTIC. The upper division transfer students are a little bit different, so we kind of will focus on them a little bit, but we will talk about transfer student services that can help both groups. So can I click this slide or not? You have to do it, right?
Sorry, yes, I do.
Okay. Okay, so we want to make sure students are aware that we have Transfer Student Services website. This is our web address, transferstudents.fsu.edu. There's a whole wealth of information on this site for transfer students relating to roundtables that we have, workshops, just all kinds of information so it really would be good to get them directed to that. Oh, and by the way, Robin Hagans is here with us, and she is the Director of Transfer Student Services. She is new to FSU starting in January. So we are very excited to have her here as well. So you can ask her any questions or direct them to her or me as well if they have specific questions. Next slide. Okay, so one of the things that we want to make sure that you all are aware of as you're talking to transfer students, we have a course, SLS 3140, Academic Success Strategies for Transfer Students. It's a 1 credit hour course, and it is intended to help students acclimate to FSU, be introduced to resources, and be given, just a whole wealth of information that will help them succeed at FSU. It is a course that we mandate, the university mandates for students who are transfer students, and after their first semester, their FSU GPA is below a 2.0, but it is not only useful for mandated students. So the students that are coming in for orientation, what we would really like is for them to be encouraged to enroll in the class. Can you go back, Sam? To the previous slide. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. I just want to let you know that what the topics are. It's not just about students on probation, and that may be what they've heard. And they take, a lot of transfer students take the SLS course in their lower division at their community college, but this is not the same. This is geared toward transfer students, and it also is geared toward kind of getting them a link to faculty here, and it does talk about study strategies and time management and things like that, but it also talks about career planning. And the most important thing is that it links them to resources at FSU. And there have been many students who have taken that course have said, oh my gosh, I really learned a lot from this course. And so it's not just for students on probation. And so we really want to encourage students to enroll in this course, because what we would like to do is have them take the course in their first semester so that they don't end up on probation and have to take it in the second semester. We're going to do some preemptive services for them and make sure that they can be successful when they come here. And it's just one credit, but it's really, really helpful to them. So this is something that we would love for you to mention to them, especially as some of these transfer students are coming in, they're having difficulty getting courses, because there's a lot of courses that are full. This is a great resource for them. So we would highly hope that you would encourage it. Okay, next slide.
Can I just want to,
please, Robin, go ahead.
and having taught SLS at Tallahassee Community College, I actually had former students who were attending FSU that mentioned this course and said how much it helped them. So, and fortunately for them, they took it on the front end, but they did say it was a wonderful way of transitioning them properly, as they would say, to the FSU environment. So that's one of the reasons why we love for you all to encourage the students who are transferring into Florida State to take this course.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really important because students are, community college transfer students, particularly those who have their AA, they've had a particular experience at their college and they've probably done well and they're moving forward now into their majors, but there is a bit of a culture shock. And so it's a different kind of institution. The higher expectations are there, but also because they're going into their majors. So even, just from lower division to upper division, there's higher expectations, but also we're a Research One institution, and, there's the expectations are there, and it can't hurt them to have that kind of resource introduction and guidance as they move forward. They will not regret it, I can tell you that much. Okay, next slide. These are just some things that we want you to make sure as the transfer students are coming in to have them think about. The number of credits that they have coming in. This is important because they will now be subject to excess credit hour issues. They have to make sure that they get their transcripts in, because that's always a huge issue, that they have to get their AA transcripts in before they can start classes, or they have to get their any test credit that they have, all of that. They think, a lot of transfer students think that because they gave it to their first institution that it automatically transfers over to us, and it doesn't. So they have to be aware of that. With faculty, we want them really to understand that they need to reach out to faculty and talk to their faculty and get to know their faculty, because sometimes they're going to be in much bigger courses and they need to be able to connect with the faculty in office hours. That's one of the things we talk about in the course a lot, that we want them to make sure that they make those connections with faculty. Also, for the upper division transfers in particular, the Career Center, it's a huge asset to them. It is a great resource, and they're going to be here. A lot of times transfer students come in and they're only here for 2 years. So it goes really, really quickly. So we want them to, hook into the Career Center as quickly as possible. And then we have some peer mentors that we've established. The Transfer Geniuses is what they're called, and they are former current transfer students who have been successful in their first semester at FSU, at least their first semester, and are serving as mentors. So we would love for them, if they go to the website, they can apply to get connected to a Transfer Genius. And that peer interaction is so helpful to help them feel like they're a part of the university, to have somebody that's, can be their go-to person that they have to ask a question to, and they can introduce them to organizations. And we have the Transfer Student Union, and we have a lot of different things that the Transfer Geniuses can really help guide them. So encourage them to look at the Transfer Geniuses. And then, balance is important. This is the same for all students, that we want to make sure they balance. A lot of these students are coming in and they're working and they're going to school. And we have a lot of situations where transfer students will come in and they think that, oh, well, I can continue to work full-time and go to school full-time. And it's a rude awakening when they get through their first semester and realize, oh my gosh, like my professors didn't say it's okay that I didn't get my assignment in because I was working. There's just a lot of really talking about balance. So, and then just kind of asking them like, hey, like, what do you need? But, and send them to us, please, because we would love to talk to them if they have any questions. Robin or myself, we are good to go, ready to help. So I think that might be our last slide.
I think so.
Okay.
Yep. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Mhm.
Before y'all jump out, I just want to make sure that everybody feels okay. Good question from Robin. Are UDT students required to take 15 hours?
No,
Okay.
they're not.
Correct.
I mean, I don't think anybody's technically required to take 15 hours, right? But we really encourage them. But I think that's important when we talk about the balance as they're determining what they want to take for upper division transfer students in particular, asking them, what is your work schedule? Because we don't want them to overextend themselves, because that's how they get in trouble, because they may have been working full time and going to taking the lower division courses and doing fine, but this is a new level of rigor and a new level of commitment that they have to make. So that's something that they really should think about. Not that they can't take 15 credit hours, but if they are working many, many hours and stuff, it's something they need to think about.
Yeah, that message has to resonate, because I think there is that impression that, and that was a lot of feedback that I received from our students who just completed the 3140 class this spring, that they were under the impression they were having to take the 15 hours as their first semester at Florida State, even though they were still trying to work, a full-time workload, which is shocking that they were working 40 and in some cases 40 plus hours. But I think the message of balance, and even having them understand, there are certain things you're going to have to adjust because you're in a, university setting, you're in a Research One institution. So you may have to cut back on your workload, but, offer them that you can at least start with your 12 hours and then just work on continuing that mapping. But I think that's the big takeaway I received from students, where they were under this impression of having to take 15 hours, even though they weren't willing to give up, their workload. So I think, if that message can be resonated, because, that's something that I think they thought they could kind of carry on with when they left their community college experience.
Any other questions?
Yeah, those are excellent points. I just want to open the floor for anybody in this room that has any additional questions about supporting our incoming transfer students. These could be our UDT students or our lower division transfers who are coming through the FTIC sessions.
Yeah, and please do introduce, let the path, a lot of the pathway students are, they're coming in as technically, only one semester, but they still can utilize some of these services. And, we are happy to talk with them in any way. It's still a transition. So. All right.
All right, we will take that silence as a sign that you guys did a great job. And we will let you go and
right,
talk about
you.
academic advising.
Thank you, Samuel, and good luck with everything.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
All right, so this next slide here just talks about the breakdowns in these blocks. You'll see how it's kind of offset and staggered in a way so that your first half of students will have block one option. So they'll be receiving academic advising, and then they'll have their academic breakout sessions. And John, my understanding that the academic breakout sessions will be other modules to complete and talk about the kind of like academic support resources.
Good question. So these are going to be kind of like, if anyone remembers in-person orientation 100 years ago, these are kind of like the interest sessions for them to learn more. And these are specifically academically related. So we have Engage 100 in there. We have pre-law, pre-health. There's two more, high school AA, and then the honors program. And we wanted to add those specifically just because they could directly impact just them, students putting their schedule together and getting a sense of what their first term is going to look like.
That's great. So we're able to offer support to these additional like kind of subpopulations based on those categories and what they're coming in with. So you'll see block one will have the first half of students will get academic advising, and then they'll go to the breakout sessions. And then block two, it's basically flip-flopped. They'll have the academic breakout sessions and then come to academic advising. Now, it's not every day that every department is going to have a block two, as in you're going to come in and it's going to be, 20 students at 10 a.m. and then another 20 at 12 p.m. Potentially, it's just a smaller session so that all of your students will be at the 10 a.m. Block. But that just depends on how students are choosing their orientation dates. You'll be able to learn about who's coming in when you check your orientation dashboard. Which is a great segue. I didn't plan that. So before you meet with your students, you should have access. If you have access to the AASS Access Advisor role in Student Central, then you have access to the BI orientation dashboard. Click the BI logo, then you'll click under CSW orientation, then you'll see the orientation dashboard. And this is going to give you very close to up-to-date idea of who to expect in your session. You can make this download a few times a week just to get an idea of how many students to expect and potentially what type of students to expect based on SAT scores. It'll pull Alex as well if they've taken it. This will just give you a peace of mind to know exactly how many students to expect. Now, it's not always up to the minute accurate. Some students do change their major kind of late in the game. But you'll have a good rough estimate as far as what kind of students to expect. And then after you identify who's all coming, we're going to fast forward. We're right in there. It's 10 a.m. and you will be advising them. We're going to break down the steps as in like step-by-step orientation advising. So first and foremost, greet them. Be friendly. This is one of their first actual encounters with a professional affiliated with FSU. We want these first impressions to be strong impressions. If you're tired, if the caffeine hasn't hit, if you're grumpy, hangry, whatever, try to leave that out of the Zoom meeting as best as possible, because we want this to feel kind of like Disney. We want this to be inviting. We want this to be welcoming and inclusive as a campus and as a community. So we want you to be friendly. And then assess their incoming credit, because that's essential to know. Before you can go into building a schedule, you have to know what they're coming in with. The majority of students are coming in with just a lot of credit these days. It's very much, and if anybody here has been in orientation, you can attest to how much credit students are coming in with. They're all, closing in on sophomore status, just about, with all their potential credit. But we also have to account for what they might have credit for. So if a student tells us that they took AP US History as a senior and they don't yet know what their score is, now, as long as they didn't, just draw pictures all over the test or only turn in with their name, we have to assume that they might have just absolutely crushed it, and they might have credit for AMH 2010 and AMH 2020. We can't get, suggested scores as a student says oh yeah, I think I probably got a 3. Okay, well, we have to account for the fact that you might have actually done very well. And we want to make sure that our schedules can reflect that, so we don't end up building a schedule for a student that would then overlap credit that they're going to come in with. So we need to then build these kinds of what we'll call a contingency plan, just given that these AP scores don't post until mid-July. So for example, this student says, I took AP Psych and I think I did well. What we should do from there is that assume the student could earn that credit and then build a schedule that does not include PSY 2012, which is the course equivalent for AP Psychology. We can encourage communication from the student so that they know to register for it in the fall if they end up not getting that 3 or above, right? So especially this will be for anybody who, is encouraging the PSY 2012. I know it's a good freshman-friendly social science core course, or if you're a psych advisor and you know that that's going to be a good intro course for that major. Any questions as far as building contingency plans before we go forward? Does that make sense? Any concerns? No concerns. Full compliance. Awesome. Great. Wait, There's a chat. That's clear. Okay, great. Confirmation. I'll take it. Step 2, start with English and math. These are your friends. We're going to try to get to, the sweet spot of 15 credit hours. Take 15 initiative. I'm not going to be the one to reinforce that. You should have all heard about it. If you attended the CIA meeting, if you've attended any CIA meeting ever in the history of CIA meetings, you've probably heard a little bit about Take 15 and its benefits, especially for first semester students, to get them acclimated academically, get them engaged academically. It promotes timely graduation. It promotes a stronger GPA at the forefront. My undergrad majors. Yes. So just be mindful that we're going to try to build a schedule that gets us up to 15 credit hours. Obviously, and I want to, look at the elephant in the room. Not every student's going to come in comfortable with 15 credit hours. Some students will have other obligations or commitments, but we want to encourage it. I've definitely seen student satisfaction surveys to reflect that a student says, my advisor forced me into 15 credit hours and I struggled. Try to read the room, see how the student feels about Take 15. They could always drop a class during drop ad if they really feel like they have other commitments. Now, I would also say, though, that other commitments should not necessarily include prioritizing rush, fraternity, sorority kind of obligations as they're expecting. I totally understand that that's a big touch point in terms of involving, building a sense of community, but they're here to learn. That's, they're here to get a degree. So if you need to kind of myth bust that, you are encouraged to do so. But anyway, we're going to start with English and math. We start with this because these are early milestones. We want these done in a timely manner. More or less, we want English done ASAP. As soon as you come in, we want English done. Math depends on the major, but more or less, we want math done by 45 credit hours. So with this in mind, all FTIC admits should have, at least with English starting out, ENC 1101 or ENC 2135 on their schedule, unless they already have their AA, because that would waive both of those early English requirements, or they've satisfied their second English with what we know of as an equivalent course. There's a list of equivalents that are in the orientation handbook that I published and sent to CIA maybe 10 minutes before this training. So you can go into that document and refer to the short list of courses that are more or less recognized as equivalents for ENC 2135. There's not a lot, and not a lot of students come in with those. There's no AP or accelerated testing credit mechanism that gives a student credit for ENC 2135. Most common, you'll see a student come in with ENC 1102. That is not an equivalent for ENC 2135. ENC 1102 counts for state mandated writing, but not that second English. So you'll have to clarify that with your students who think, okay, I'm done with English because I did dual enrollment ENC 1101 and 1102. ENC 2135 will have a lot of seats for our incoming summer seat admits and our incoming fall admits. In an ideal world, all of the admits should have ENC 2135. Maybe some towards the end of orientation will not have that, but they could always get it in for spring if they can't get it during drop ad. Any questions as far as English? Carla, you want to hit me with another that's clear? We good? Anyway, going on. Summer C admits in math. No, just don't. It's bad business. We want to be mindful that math at the university level. I'm looking outside. It's weather going on out there. Math at the university level is, no joke. It really depends on the student and the major. I would assume maybe some students feel comfortable, or they say that they're comfortable. But if it's MAC 1105 or above and they have to take ALEKS, I would suggest my own personal practice would be not to touch Mac 1105 or above during summer C. Summer C is an accelerated semester. It takes place over 6.5 weeks or so. It would be a lot because how we teach math here requires a lot of practice and a lot of reinforcement. Not to say that, students would struggle, but we don't really even offer a lot of sections for summer C for these introductory math courses, just because we recognize that our summer C admits should probably not get in the business of taking Mac 1105 or above. Now, potentially the MGF courses, if a student's trying to take practical finite math or math for liberal arts, potentially, but again, we're not in any kind of rush to give them math and have them start their summer C taking math. The big thing though, with all of our admits, get in the chat, for nutrition and integrated physiology majors, fine for nutrition and physiology majors. So you'll know your major and what kind of like general expectations, and as you start to inquire with colleagues about, ideal first semester schedules, ideal summer C schedules, you might notice, like Corey Lowry just mentioned in the chat, that it might be fine. And students show no historical issue with taking one of the maths over the summer. The big thing though with math is ALEKS, as a lot of our majors do require college algebra and above. That's the big kind of touch point to be mindful of with ALEKS. If a student has to take Mac 1105 or above, regardless of whatever credit that they're coming in, they need to take ALEKS. That needs to be on file. Some students will understand this and they'll read about it in the starting at state module, and then they'll come in and they'll tell you they took it. Awesome. Some are going to take it the last minute. Not as awesome, not as ideal. We want to promote taking ALEKS. I'm not going to turn this into all about ALEKS training. This is about orientation advising. If you want to read up on ALEKS, and maybe you missed the CIA meeting where Sarah Hammond talked about ALEKS extensively, go read the Orientation Advisor Handbook, get an idea of the cutoff scores, of course suggestions and placement based on those scores, the pretest, kind of frequently asked questions, all of that. You should be mindful of. You don't have to, memorize all of it, but just be mindful of how ALEKS works with students in math. From there, so if we're starting to build our schedule and we started with English and math in some capacity, beyond that, I want us to think about FIGs for our fall FTIC students only, especially early on. FIGs make this easier. It gives you a good balance. Some of them include sections of ENC 1101 or ENC 2135 or a math that's kind of built into that interest area or that major. It makes your life easier when you start with a FIG. So also in the Orientation Advisor Handbook and in It's All Academic publication, there's a huge list of FIGs. They're broken down by these interest areas or potential majors that the student's exploring in or is already committed to. Make a note of the FIGs that coincide with the major that you're advising in. These are going to be your bread and butter until the FIGs are filled. It's not every day that every FIG is filled by the end of orientation. Does anybody in this chat want to talk about the benefits of FIGs? Just let me catch my breath for a minute. You guys are all experts. I see some people who are orientation veterans in this room. Why, outside of making schedule building easier for us, would we suggest a student to take a FIG?
I can speak up, Sam.
Go for it.
Yeah, FIGs are awesome because they provide students with the opportunity to meet like-minded students that might be interested in a specific major or just field, and provides that sense of community, which, especially at this point, I think students are definitely craving, is that sense of community. But also FIGs provide an opportunity for opportunities to research said field, because I believe they bring in speakers. There's certain assignments that they do in the colloquium class where they have to research the field, build a resume, And so students just really benefit a lot from it, just because of that community component and just being able to see if like that field is for them before they like go all in and pick up said major.
Yes, that. If you could just copy and paste that into the chat, just so everybody can like read it and let it marinate. FIGS build community. It's been time tested, super very much approved as an Engage 100 opportunity. It gives students the opportunity to have a sense of a small classroom as they go in and try to acclimate to potential classrooms that have 300 to 500 seats. If you are enrolled in a FIG cluster, you are enrolled in a schedule that's shared with 18 other students, 18 other FTIC freshman students, 18 other 18 to 19-year-old students who are just getting into FSU, trying to build the same sense of community and connection. It's based on these interest areas. So you have a lot in pre-health fields, business fields, criminology fields, English, film, so many different clusters. And other things that are being mentioned, built-in peer accountability. It's hard to get lost when you're in a FIG. Absolutely. Good question from Amy Sanderson. Remind me, do students enroll in the colloquium class at the same time as the FIG cluster? Yes, it will be section or course HUM 1920, and then they'll enroll in a specific section that correlates to their FIG, and that's going to include the FIG cluster, which is a 1 credit hour colloquium class. Not a cluster, but yeah, they'll register for the cluster, 1 credit hour colloquium. And then that's also going to build in the entire schedule reflected in the FIG. Those FIG seats are protected for students. And then it creates longtime friendships in college, facilitates potential study partners and study groups. So it sounds like FIGs naturally built in offer friends, studying, accountability, connection. Who wouldn't want that?
Sam,
Yes.
I taught one of the FIG leader training sections this spring. And so it's, juniors and seniors that actually teach the FIG colloquium, which is also an incredible resource. It gives them like a mentor, these students in these FIGs. So, and these kids are like high performing, students who want to help provide that community and that resource for the freshmen. So it's really great.
Wait a second, Heather. So you're telling me that they get a mentor who's an upperclassman as well? What?
Mhm.
Wow. I
Yep.
wish I had a FIG.
Yeah, I know. I'm jealous. I wish I had that when I was here.
Yeah. So it sounds like everybody in the room should just really start out with FIGs. Suggest FIGs.
Sam, I have a question
Yes.
for clarification.
Sure.
Yeah, FIGs are great. So my question though is, it says for fall FTIC students only. My memory might be not serving me well, but are there going to be no seats, summer seats for FIGs for our summer C students?
So you can suggest, and sorry, it's basically like if you're coming in as a freshman for fall, you can have a FIG at your disposal. But as my memory serves me, and I'm rehashing some traumatic experiences where I would suggest a FIG for a summer C admit, because they can't register until July 14th. If I lean too heavily on the FIGs for my summer C admits, some of those sections might be gone.
Yes, that is right. I do remember there might have been like 5 seats per FIG for summer students. So I just maybe we can get a little bit of clarity on that. But yeah, I remember the same thing, Sam.
Yeah, so it's tough to account for, right? Nobody here majored in fortune telling, so we cannot predict how many FIG sections are going to be available. And if there are 5, seats reserved for each section, I know, also trauma is coming back. If there was, a few coveted FIGs that I knew, or a few specific to a major, like I know criminology, for instance, did not have a lot of FIG options. I think they had like 2 or 3. The bigger ones, such as business, pre-health, those are, maybe easier things. But it depends on that accelerated credit, because there might be only so many sections available that don't overlap with what the student could be bringing in. So getting some stuff when advising summer orientation, we need a FIG schedule, could be plan A, ideal, and then the schedule without a FIG. So just proceed with caution. Don't lean too heavily into FIGs when advising for our summer C students. We could be in, more communication with them, because they're going to be potentially on campus at this time. They're going to be going through registration while enrolled in summer C. So we can be in touch with them and let them know after we've built their schedule, hey, it looks like that FIG has dried up. Let's talk about some other options. Summer C admits also, and this is not to diminish all of the awesomeness that we already listed associated with FIGs. Summer C students do get this great opportunity to kind of build a sense of community while they're here, because we're only really letting them enroll in 6 or 7 credit hours at most, really. It's at a pace, and it's presented in a way that's comfortable for their acclimation. And then classes are typically a little bit smaller. Campus is a little bit less crowded, so they can typically build a sense of community just through all the other summer involvement options. And then Lauren Higby mentioned, if they can't get a FIG, they can always do some other Engage 100 opportunity. Absolutely correct. Great job. I'll let Lauren Higby talk about other Engage 100 opportunities later. Oh, just like SLS 1004 STEM, study skills for STEM majors. That sounds great. Anyway, beyond FIGs, let's talk about the what's left list. This is a spreadsheet that's going to be updated regularly and posted to orientation teams. It's going to give us a snapshot of, you guessed it, what's left out there in terms of courses available for summer C and courses available for fall. It's going to be broken down based on liberal studies or general ed requirements. It's going to give you an additional column of how many seats remain, and if there are reserve caps associated. Anybody want to clarify what a reserve cap means, just for anybody who might be very much new to this whole thing of advising? Nope. Okay, I'll take it. That's fine. Thanks. Reserve caps basically reserve a certain section for a specific population, or they reserve seats in a certain section for that specific population. Common reserve caps look like reserving seats for honors students, care students, students in particular majors, students for study abroad programs. You'll see those show up as you're navigating and poking around in Schedule Planner. You want to make sure that if your student is not in any of those populations, that they're not registering or trying to register for those sections, because that's just going to cause the students some early heartburn. So just be mindful of those sections as they're going to be listed in the what's left list. Also be mindful of the fact that you'll see some sections of courses that have fewer than 10 seats remaining. So I would say that this is bad business to give that seat or give that course or that section to a student on their schedule, because it's very much likely that, as so many other students are coming through orientation, that student will not get that seat. So if there's a section such as PSY 2012, the last section available has only 5 seats remaining, I would not lean on that as an option for the student. I would say, hey, if you see that this is open, great. If not, let's have some backup plans. So after English and math, after FIGs, we're looking at the what's left list, and it's our goal to identify other early milestones or course sequences to start within that student's major, and then try to create a balance with some of the other liberal studies requirements. So case in point, there are very few students that come in with ethics requirements or an X or Y diversity courses from high school. So these are some great courses that can help offset, potentially the math sequence or a natural science sequence or anything for your incoming STEM majors. because they might need the natural science course and say Mac 1101, 1105 and above during their first term. So you want to try to build a sense of balance and let both sides of the brain kind of do their thing. Your major also probably has some good introductory or freshman-friendly courses to take during their first or second term. Ideally, there are seats available so that your students can get, I think like Rolly had mentioned, acclimated to their major. Ideally, in some of these, depends on the major. I know some majors more or less just say like, take care of, liberal studies and gen ed requirements for your first semester. But ideally, a student can get a whiff of what their major can look like. After you're building that schedule that ideally reflects 15 credit hours and includes some math, some English, some liberal studies, some early milestones or course sequences within their major, you want to document your meeting. And back in the day, prior to, online advising, this was just the Wild West out there. Bad handwriting abound. But now that we can, we're going to be doing this online and all of our departments have some fillable PDFs or some good documentation practices that we learned from last year. This should be a lot easier and more clarity should be out there when you're building these schedules, but I just need to make it known. You want to clarify the prefix of the course, the 3 letters, the title of the course, the number, and also what requirements these courses meet, as in why am I suggesting this course about like ethical life choices and good decisions, right? Probably because it would be an ethics course. You want to then take that document that you built with a student and upload it to Campus Connect. This year, all advisors are expected to use Campus Connect to not only provide that documentation, which will help the student get that digital kind of footprint or receipt of their meeting. This will also help when you're reviewing their schedules with their incoming accelerated credit hits or their ALEC scores post. It will then help you follow up with that kind of information. And then it's also going to be used to document their attendance. Attendance is needed to be documented every day by about 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is essential for the student to be then allowed to register. Any questions as far as building a schedule? What to include, what to be mindful of? Okay, Carla, are we still clear? I'm picking on you, Carla, but you're my favorite. All right, we got the all clear from Carla, y'all. All right, so throughout the meeting, we want to connect with students. Again, to reiterate, this is our first impression that we're helping build with our students. We want it to be a strong first impression. We understand that advising kind of happens in a vacuum during orientation. We might not be able to have all the time in the world to connect, figure out all their hopes and dreams and what they want to do while they're at FSU, because we have a lobby full of 19 other students waiting for our services, but we want to try to forge that sense of connection to the university, because after orientation, after registration, it might be a while before they, move to Tallahassee. It might be a while before they start to try to build other senses, another sense of connection with FSU. So you want to help them answer their initial questions or concerns with FSU, and you want to lean on orientation leaders or college life coaches who are going to serve as moderators to help kind of triage and talk about the transition to college, what to expect, what resources to rely on early, and that whole giant campus life aspect that I cannot begin to get into because we'd be here all day. You also want to encourage questions and communication. Students have no idea what their advisor is supposed to do. When you say advisor to an 18-year-old who has not stepped foot on campus, they think maybe guidance counselor. They think teacher. They think like my new mom or dad, right? You want to let them know what value you play in their experience at FSU, how you're going to help them make the most out of their major and make the most out of their time here at FSU. And therefore, you also want to show that you're available. You want to make sure that you want the students to have your email or however, you can be best reached. And you want to follow up your conversations with emails to continue to demonstrate that value and keep the conversation going. Advising is not a transaction at all. It is a process. If students are coming in with these contingency plans, you want them to reach out to you. You want to make sure you're available to keep this conversation going so that they can have as close to an ideal first semester as possible. You want to let your summer C admits know that, hey, we're building a schedule for fall. You're not going to register for fall until July 14th. Some things might have changed. Your AP credit will likely have posted. Sections may no longer be available, but I'm here on campus, here to help. So you want to demonstrate that value. A bad first impression can leave a bad taste in the mouth of a student, right? They might change their major. They might fall prey to some other policies because they didn't want to ask you for clarification on certain things. So that first impression matters a great deal during orientation. So, and I know some of our veterans in the room can attest to this. Orientation advising is a different kind of beast. It can feel like a lot sometimes. You want to hit the reset button after every day. You want to come in present. You want to come in excited. You want to figure out like what is exciting about FSU and help the student identify that. Other approaches during orientation, you want to use student first language. You want to use the term starting at state or new null orientation language. Again, you want to lean on moderators during the chat. You don't have to be the, end all be all to every question that they have, because sometimes an orientation leader will be able to present it in a way that better resonates with the student because they're peers. You want to be mindful of any provided pronouns. It's 2021. We should be mindful of pronouns. And we do not want to use uncaptioned videos if you're going to use a video. Corey Lowry, did you ever get your caption stuff figured out? Yes, all caps, yes, love it, great. Be mindful of acronyms. It's acronym soup out here, right? We know what FSU stands for, but students don't know what ACE stands for. So just be mindful of that. Other jargon based on your department, just be mindful of it, that, it'll go over students' heads. Words like kids, parents, dorm, cafeteria, guys, etc. I would say, and maybe because I'm leaving, I can get away with this, as in I won't be doing orientation stuff. I would say y'all, because I'm from the South. Y'all seems to be pretty inclusive, but don't tell your students that they're kids. Corey said, we use a YouTube video to present liberal studies requirements in the context of our NUEEP major. Gotcha. Awesome. So YouTube, making videos can definitely offset that stuff. Save yourself some breath. Let the students watch that stuff while they're in the general meeting, while you're in a breakout room. That can definitely help kind of inform the student at the front end. I like it. Corey, do you have that video done? Could we drop that link in the chat just to give others an example of what you guys are doing at the NUEEP major? Awesome. Thank you, Corey. But yeah, so let me ask, why would it not be best practice to call our incoming students kids? They get offended because they're adults. Oh, wow. Yeah, they are adults. So they're not kids. It's condescending. Great. Okay, just to make sure. And we don't want to assume that their parents are the ones, behind the scenes getting them there, right? Could be guardians. I call them, vested stakeholders, family members. Great. We just don't know who is helping behind the scenes and orchestrating that. We want to be mindful of dorm, cafeteria, guys. All of these are kind of dated, no longer the best terms. Anybody else have any? You could share maybe a story or an anecdote or a word that you maybe heard during your orientation experiences, or maybe a word that you use that is no longer best practice? Any other examples? They're learning to be adults and want to support their growth and development. Yes. 100% yes. If we downplay it and we call them kids, no bueno. Your people, yeah. Those in your corner. Your team. I love it. Good stuff. All right, so we kind of get it. That's great. All of my graduates from new advisor training, we know how to be mindful of our words. So again, I have to really just reinforce this because I've heard what happens when advisors don't present FSU or their major to be like Disney World, and I don't want that to happen. Again, your positive first impression can be very lasting. Orientation is a lot of information that the students have to digest in the best we can do in terms of format, in terms of timing, but it's a lot. And college is very important for these students coming in, right? This is what they've been working toward. And if you're burnout, if you are uncaffeinated and tired and groggy and grumpy and hangry, or anything that's, you're bringing that the negative vibes in, that's going to, again, leave that bad taste in the student's mouth. You don't have to scare them about the common transition issues, because we could also, in the same light, make the assumption that they're going to nail the landing and transition successfully, assuming that they are presented resources and opportunities to connect. You can be real and authentic about any competitive or limited access majors, but you don't want to scare them away from it before they even start, right? Fully recognize that some courses have high DFW rates, which means that the student is more likely to maybe drop, fail, or withdraw. But that doesn't mean every student in orientation needs to be presented that information, right? Because then they're just going to change away from your major. They're going to be very much like scared, put off by your major and their requirements. If you're leading with, "Hi, welcome to FSU. My major is very competitive. There's a lot of math and science, included within this major, and not a lot of students do well and they change out of this major. But welcome." If you, kind of cultivate that scene, that's not going to leave any good impression on the major or FSU with the students. It's just going to make it seem like this place is full of gatekeepers. So be sincere, be welcoming, be excited. They chose FSU. That should be a good thing, right? We want them to make the most out of this experience. Yeah. Working with other stakeholders, parents, guardians, family, team, etc. It's totally possible and likely that these other folks will try to steer the meeting, will Zoom bomb. They'll come in with their own agenda. I remember last year, a student would wait for parent who was off screen to finish asking the question, and then the student would ask it to me. We just want to be mindful that we should redirect these questions and ensure that the student is receiving the information. We're not here to have conversations with parents, family. They have their own sessions to attend, as I outlined that earlier. Just remember, and we want to set this up as an early expectation so that these boundaries aren't blurred later. Advising is for the student and no one else. The student should be the one clicking through, starting at state modules. The student should be the one in your breakout room, and the student alone should be in there. For those veterans last year, any anecdotes or stories about how you redirected a family member out of an advising meeting?
Hey, Sam.
Hi.
Hey. I wanted to add, I guess, a nugget or a thought in terms of last year, just kind of noting, at least maybe this is more my opinion than fact. I think it's okay for the family members to be present. I think what we want to minimize is their level of engagement and disruption. So I think that it's okay if they are around, because that might be, a part of their culture. It might be just a part of how they structure their family. We just want to make sure that the student is getting and receiving the information. So we definitely don't want to say, hey, family member, you can't be at the kitchen table with your student, but we don't want to go to that extreme, I guess. I know that was a big concern last year, and some advisors may have been doing that. And I don't think that we should waste our energy or time doing that. We should just do the best we can in terms of some of the things that you're mentioning here about making sure we're addressing the student and supporting all of those pieces, but knowing that it's not at all the end of the world if the family member is present.
Yeah, great clarification, Dawn. All right, so next we're going to work with late students, because this is just a human element. So if a student shows up late, you want to try to accommodate them. An example of a student showing up late is basically like, you think you only have 5 students left in your breakout room, and then one more jumps in. If, depending on time, they can't be accommodated in that session or during that same day, provide an explanation that is appropriate and professional. Explain to them that you cannot fit them in, and that they should email NSFP, New Student Family Programs, at orientation@fsu.edu. It's kind of a generic catch-all email. It goes to John Tilley, Allison Hughes, a few others, and they will help work with the student to reschedule them for another orientation session. The student needs to initiate this and send that email, not the advisor. We're trying to empower our students here. They need to take ownership of this situation. But again, you want to be sincere and kind in this process. Don't sour them on advising or FSU just because they were late.
Sam, I
Any
have one
questions,
quick thing to
concerns
add.
in
That's
working
cool.
with late students?
Hey, Sam, I have a quick add, if that's
Hi,
cool.
go for it.
So I think because of the way we are rolling out the sessions and sending out, like posting the rosters and sending the emails and things like that, and this was true last year, but is more true this year. If they miss, like that's going to put them back to probably the following week. So it's not like they can just hop on the next day, even though they'll think so, because they'll say, oh, it's virtual. Like, why can't I? You're here, like whatever. But the trouble is, like, we already post rosters, like you all prepare for certain students on certain days. And honestly, we don't have the capacity to just go in and like manually shift people around. Like, we need people to be swept up in the process for their session. And so just keep in mind that if they do miss that day, and it very well is probably, something on their end, it is going to be a hot little minute before they get into another session, unfortunately.
And we can clarify that, it won't be an immediate process. And it might, not be till later in the week or, in the next week, but they will get an orientation advising session. They will get a class schedule. They will get to FSU, and they will have a great time. So some policies that impact orientation. Well, before I move on to policies, any other questions, comments, concerns, confessions, complaints in working with late students? None. Okay, great. Policies impacting orientation. A big one that kind of can sneak up on us, but is showing up more and more often. There is a cap to how much accelerated test credit FSU will take. It's only 45 test credits may be awarded, and test credits are AP, IB, CLEP, and ACE. Not ACE tutoring, AICE, whatever that stands for. Now, a student can deny credit at any time, but the process of denying credit, I will just, say, don't get into this business, because they don't know if they will need it later on. This credit could be potentially helpful. Just be mindful, though, that FSU will only accept 45 and no more test credits. Also, you need to be mindful of some of these students are coming in. Most of them will have your typical English and math sequence, but there are required prep courses, also known as remediation credit, but I wouldn't use that term with a student. These are applicable to students who are what we'll typically code as alternative admits. They were admitted through athletics, care, music, film, dance. There are other criterias beyond test scores for which these students are admitted. So per state of Florida, if they do come in with a lower SAT or ACT score and no accelerated credit in English or math, then they're going to have to follow a certain testing protocol. Chances are the people in athletics, care, music, film, dance will be mindful of this because their SAT information is posted in the orientation dashboard. So these students will be already reached out to be provided the test credit information. Sorry, not test credit, but the testing information. There are 3 testing mechanisms so that the student can test out of these required prep courses. Nelson Denny, EDEP for English and reading, and then they use ALEX now for math. But they want to make sure that these students have the opportunity to avoid taking these required prep courses if at all possible. But just be mindful that some of these students will come in with no accelerated credit in English or math and lower than typically admitted SAT, ACT score. And then you need to follow up with them on potential for these required prep courses and testing information so they could potentially test out of them. Had a chat. Jill, for the 45-hour test credit cap, Records prefers these students denied the credit within the first year, as the inflated hour can significantly impact university college progress checks. GPS reached out to these students with next steps and information in the fall, which is basically to meet with their advisor and kind of perform kind of a loose audit on all the credit that they're bringing in to ultimately figure out what they want to deny, what might not be useful for them. And useful is going to be dependent on the student and the major. So that's just a tougher conversation to unpack during orientation, especially if a student's coming in with potential credit. So we don't really know if they're going to come in with 45 credit hours. And again, this is only for yes, Carla, you are correct. Nothing that the student's bringing in from dual enrollment or test credit is going to count against them towards excess credit. So they're all at, their counter is at 0. And again, this is only for incoming testing credit. It could be very popular that a lot of students perform well in dual enrollment programs, and those just count right into their, I guess, credit hour accumulation. Good questions, good comments, good energy, good vibes, y'all. Thank you. Another policy impacting orientation is foreign language requirement. This only impacts some majors or some colleges. Basically, a student needs to demonstrate proficiency through the 2000 level to satisfy this requirement. Students can do this one of 2 ways: through CLEP, college level exam. Yep, lost that acronym, sorry. Or the foreign language placement exam. Just know that CLEP awards test credit, foreign language placement awards appropriate placement, or could potentially help waive the requirement. If you have a student who is proficient or fluent in a language that is not taught at FSU, they can discuss their options with the Department of Modern Languages and Linguistics. This usually just means that they will have to demonstrate fluency with potentially faculty or staff who is fluent in the language. It's best to be left with that department to organize and arrange for that. Additionally, it's not common that students need to start with their foreign language requirement, but it is something that students might feel more fresh on, or if they are at all remembering their Spanish stuff, fresca, which is Spanish for fresh. So if they're feeling like good about it and they know that they're committed to their major and they know their major has a foreign language placement, it might be better to do this early, because if they just took a lot of Espanol in senior year of high school, it might make sense for them to at least see how they stand with this early on. So they could take CLEP or foreign language placement through the testing center at FSU. All right, let's talk about supporting our students through the wonderful environment that is registration. What was it, yesterday? I don't know. It was a day earlier this week. We had an 45-minute long video walkthrough with Heidi Music with Civitas, the company that owns and operates the platform that we use and know of as Schedule Planner. The students can follow the steps to register in there. It's all academic handbook. That's kind of the easiest way. Like, we don't need to get involved in teaching them how to register. Also note that we have a different view from our end, and we can't necessarily easily, share our screen while the students, watching us and going through their screen. Not a lot of students, if any at all, are coming in with like a dual monitor setup. So we don't have to be in charge of teaching them how to register. We can use degree progress. We could leverage these and model appropriate usage, but we don't have to teach them how to register. There are links to videos available in CIA under Advisor Essentials. Students are taught how to register after completing their advising. Is that right, John? Yes, thought so. So they are taught by OLs, by new student family programs, how to register. You do not have to take that upon you to teach the student how to use this super, comprehensive registration platform. Again, when we give them, advising, we just give them the schedule. We can rely on our other campus partners to teach them how to register. Course registration module shows them how and lists their orientation hold once completed. So they have one module after advising to complete. It will be basically a module that instructs them how to register. And then after completing said module, that last hold will be lifted and then they can register. So be mindful of that process and explain that to them. But I don't know, there's once a year an advisor is like, what do I do with the schedule planner? They don't know how to use it. Nobody knows how to use it yet when they're meeting with you. Some common barriers to registration just to be mindful of. Holds can show up. Very common ones are health immunizations, or I think insurance as well. Basically, a student can email healthcompliance@fsu.edu. There's always discussion about how we can get that process going faster. It's tough. Basically, it's tough to outline a specific time frame of when that hold will be lifted. You just want to encourage the student to take act, do it quickly, promote that sense of urgency that, like seats are being taken up. Reach out to Health Compliance at fsu.edu, let them know about the hold. Again, you want to empower the student to do this. You don't have to take this upon yourself or put this in your workflow to reach out on behalf of the student. Health immunizations can take a little bit. Financial responsibility, very quick. Basically, all the student has to do is click through some steps on their to-do list to more or less acknowledge that they're going to be financially responsible for what's on their schedule after drop ad week. Then we have reserve caps, as we've already discussed a little bit. Just note sections or courses that have a lot of reserve caps, and be mindful of those going forward when working with your students. The goal of the registration session is to model the registration process and get them a schedule, not craft the perfect schedule. A lot of students come in and feel as if they need to build the, most ideal schedule and account for all of their different breaks that they want to have. They want to try to truncate their classes only on Tuesdays and Thursdays because they don't want to learn on Fridays. Potentially, I don't know, I'm just, guessing here. But students do come in and spend quite a bit of time trying to pick those ideal courses and schedules. This isn't really the time to do that, just because there are a lot of students going through registration. A lot of seats end up vanishing in certain courses. Availability is then, very fluid. Some students want to know some things about courses that they don't have access to right out the gate. such as like, is this professor better than this other professor? They know of Rate My Professor somehow. You need to be mindful that we don't condone Rate My Professor. Nobody should condone Rate My Professor as an accurate or reliable tool to evaluate professors. Yeah, because I mean, anybody can, rate any professor. Like, we can all go in as a group and rate all of the UF professors very poorly. But it's just not, it's not good practice to rely on that. That's why the university uses SPCI. I don't know what it stands for. That's an acronym that, yeah, and there's no chili peppers for UF. Nuh-uh, not with those tacky colors. SPCI is the university's internal way of evaluating instructor effectiveness. We catch a lot more data, a lot more accurate data. Professors dole these surveys out towards the end of the semester, and then students can use this if they're really trying to get an idea of Professor A versus Professor B. I like to just tell students that if they're really in that business of evaluating professors, it's like, you don't want to rely on some, hearsay from students you haven't met, because if a student does bad in a course and they didn't take ownership of it, well, yeah, they might actually be like, oh yeah, this professor wasn't helpful at all. The professor could be awesome and very engaging. So your mileage may vary in terms of your professor's experiences. Some other common questions the students have during registration is, why does it say TBA for date and time? Or why does it say staff is my instructor? Or how long does it take to get from building A to building B? These are questions that you can answer. TBA means to be announced. It could be an online or remote course. Staff means more or less it's going to be taught by a TA, and they're still, identifying ideal staff placement for those courses. It doesn't mean that they're inequipped. They all go through extensive training. They know how to teach. They know how to grade and evaluate student performance. And then how long does it take to get from this building to this other building? This is a fun one where you can show them the FSU campus map and in general, let them know that with a light to moderate brisk walk, they can make it from any point on campus to any other point on campus in about 20 minutes or so. This does not include Innovation Park for engineering, if they're trying to get down there as well. Drew Stapp asked, if a student wanted evaluation information on a professor, are they able to access SPCI? Yes, they are. Information on that is in there. It's all academic book. Any other questions about student questions? Again, you could answer these in kind of like more or less generic terms. You don't really need to like unpack these kind of conversation points with students or provide a historical context or anything like that in terms of this stuff. Again, registration is really just get them to get some classes on their schedule. Let them know when registration ends. That information is posted in the Orientation Advisor Handbook. Let them know, though, that the longer they wait to craft this schedule and to finalize the schedule, the fewer seats will remain. Some other things just to be mindful of. Student may be stuck with an early class or a class on Friday afternoon. This is very much normal. Incoming students are typically the last groups to register. So the more coveted class days and times will likely be filled. It's possible that they could play musical chairs with these. Corey Lowry, student perception of courses and instructors. Yeah, I'm not going to build that into my brain bandwidth. Nope. But you guys can, or y'all can. But yeah, this is totally normal. It's totally possible that a student will get a class that starts at 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. or 9 a.m. It happens. It's fine. They just did that at high school. High school started at like 7:30. Learn something every day. Yes, we do. It's also possible that a student might have a class that's on a Friday afternoon. Though it's rare because faculty don't really want to teach on Friday afternoons. It's what I'm finding when I look at these course availabilities. But it's just definitely possible. And we want to promote the fact that like they should be invested as learners, and it shouldn't be like a switch that they turn on and off and say, I only learn and do FSU stuff pertaining to my classes on a Tuesday, Thursday between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. They need to be a little bit more committed to academics than that. It's also possible that a student may take an online course. This is even pre-pandemic, that we do have some courses that are taught online, some sections that are available for students in fall and summer that are going to be entirely online. I know a lot of students are probably chomping at the bit to like learn in a physical space with other students as they were cooped up online the past year of high school or whatever. Just be mindful that FSU takes their online instruction very seriously. It's very effective here. Whatever, kind of context they had from high school, they can more or less leave that back in high school. This is university level teaching, and it will prove to be an engaging course. So just be mindful when you're talking about any courses that have to be online for that student. For UDT sessions, upper division transfer, just be mindful of any major mapping milestones for terms 4 and 5. And then all of their general ed requirements are going to be waived, more or less, so that you can then focus on graduation requirements, those other kind of remarks as far as your last, however many hours need to be completed at the 3,000, 4,000 level. Their schedules will just be then different. So they're not going to be competing with the same kind of, competing for the same kind of courses that your FTIC students are. And just be mindful that your major has some specifics outlined in terms of some of these graduation requirements. This example down here, not every student can take SPC 1017 to satisfy their oral competency communication requirement. Some majors have it built in to take some 3,000 or 4,000 level major class that is built with outcomes that align with that oral competency requirement. So supporting students and supporting yourself during registration, you may need to reach out to someone else during orientation and registration season. Be mindful that you can use Teams. Teams is the future. Be a Teams player. A lot of us are on Teams. And if you have a quick question, you can ask the group and get really helpful insight. I saw this so many examples through just about every orientation session. Somebody would be able to, ping the group, ask a question, get some good replies, get some good insight. Especially if you're new, I would just rely on Teams and your team here at FSU to make sure that you feel supported and confident relaying this information for your students. Whew. All right. I think I'm done talking, but I want to, done talking for now. Any questions, comments, concerns as far as what was outlined here in the last 36 slides before I hand it over to Jill?
Sam, can I ask or mention something?
Yes.
The students are going to be given the opportunity, if they're needing to change their major, they're going to be given the opportunity beforehand to try to change their major before they come to orientation so that they will get the right advisor. But if for some reason they come to your advising session and they say, I'm thinking about changing my major, you'll need to advise them as best you can. And then they'll have to go through the major change process after orientation, and it won't probably happen until the fall semester starts and they can go through the regular major change process. But if they have questions, if they say, this is my major now, but I'm thinking about changing my major, but I'm not sure what I want to change it to, or I have questions, we're going to have major change world, our little major change sessions, help sessions during first year Fridays from 11 to 12 on first year Fridays. So if students have questions and they're telling you that they're interested in maybe changing their major and they have questions, send them to the first year Fridays from 11 to 12, and we can talk with them and they can talk to an advisor. But you're going to have to they can't change their major, during orientation. So it's going to have to be that they do it before and they go to the right advisor, or they're with you guys and y'all, and we give them, the information that you can, and then send them to the major change world afterwards.
Solid. I'll just put that in the chat. just to document it. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Oh, sorry, one other thing too, sorry. Upper division transfer students can't change their major. They were accepted into their major, and if they're upper division, they're not allowed to change their major even after orientation, barring some moving heaven and earth kind of thing, but they are admitted in their major, so they can't just go and change their major. I mean, they'll be told that if they come to try to change their major, but you might want to let them know that up front. Now I'm done.
Great. Question posed in direct message, but I'll be honest, I have no idea what this is. Does anybody here from UGS leadership folks know when the last day for major change can take place in terms of like pre-advising? And if not, then we'll be able to follow up.
It will be, it depends, because I mean, they need to try to get it in at least 2 or 3 days beforehand, because it takes time to process it and do that. But if it's processed before, we can get, we need to also be able to assign them to a new advisor if the change is done. So the closer it is to orientation, the less likely that is to be able to be done before that. So I would say tell them at least, several days before, if not more, to try to make that change if they want to get the appropriate advisor.
Hey, Heather, are those students receiving any, or are students receiving any communication or anything that says, leading up to orientation advising, if you want to change your major, here's how?
Yes, there's a pre-advising survey, but there's also it goes out in their module saying that if they want to change their major, they can do it this way, but it can't be done, that they need to do it in enough advance before so they get the appropriate advisor.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Good clarification. Any other questions, comments on, again, the 35 slides that were covered prior? All right, then I'm going to turn it over to Jill Fleece. Yes, we are definitely recording this. And I'll have this set up as a video and sent out to CIA sometime this afternoon. All right, Jill, take it away.
All right, thanks, Sam. If you can go to the first slide. And for those of you that were able to join the CIA meeting last week, while some of these slides look very familiar and similar, we're actually going to kind of dive a little bit more deeply into some of the statements, especially how it is applicable within these next few weeks. So as I've mentioned in the past, this group is becoming a lot larger. Before, it was really unusual to see a student that had an AA degree out of high school, but it is becoming more and more prevalent. Just as we had mentioned, just students in general are bringing in a lot of credit. So as a student tells you, I have this AA degree, the first question is going to be, where did it come from? Because it's very different if a student has their AA degree from an out-of-state institution or a private institution. They still have to satisfy all the general education requirements individually, just as any other first time in college admit. However, if they've earned their AA degree from a public institution in the state of Florida, their gen ed requirements can reflect that of a traditional transfer student that earned an AA degree at a Florida public institution. And so it really is dramatically different. It's not just the question of, do you have the degree, but really where did it come from? Because that will change the response. Prior knowledge of this degree is based on self-reporting. I know Sam had mentioned earlier the BI dashboard, which is really helpful as you prepare for orientation. And there's a column that says self-reported AA. I will tell you that is not the most accurate information. It comes from the student's application when they apply to the university. And so it is a great starting point, but it is not the end all be all. Some students I have found will check off that they're receiving an AA degree when in reality they only took 2 or 3 dual enrollment courses. So it was kind of whatever their interpretation was of that question, it was answered incorrectly. Other students don't disclose it at all. They will put all of their dual enrollments, but they may not say they're getting the degree. And so that column, like I said, really is just the starting point. Now, there are other mechanisms in place to try to better identify these students. It's still based on self-reported. But admissions will be asking them kind of this week, next week, as part of some of their follow-up information they have to provide to admissions if they're getting the AA degree. Also, as part of that, the pre-advising survey, they'll be asked, are you getting this degree? And so we'll kind of have these different checkpoints. Additionally, once classes have already started, as we get into summer and fall, GPS will also start just running our reports to figure out who's coming in with a significant amount of dual enrollments. And we'll just reach out to them and ask them, did you forget to tell anybody that you happen to get this degree? But for the purposes of orientation, you are very much relying on just the data that's provided that is just a snippet of it. A big challenge is always the timing of the posting of the degree. It is highly unlikely by the time they see you, that degree will be posted. So it oftentimes pins till late summer, potentially in fall. I get a lot of questions from advisors about why it takes so long. Why does it take so long to get through the system? Because it's really hard to advise at orientation. And it's also really hard to advise in the fall because everything may not be here yet. A lot of that is because of the colleges and just their timing of posting it. You cannot post an AA degree until the high school diploma is conferred. And so oftentimes that's kind of a reason, a barrier of what waits. Also, I'm seeing more and more schools just post them at the same time. And so they'll say, okay, high school students, if you didn't meet our cutoff for when we posted for spring, you have to wait till August when we post everybody's all together. And so there's just a continued delay. Sometimes then even saying, if you don't meet the summer cutoff for whatever reason, oftentimes it's because they also have test credit that they're using as part of this AA degree. They may not post it until December. And so it's really tough. And that's why, once we in GPS identify this student, we are constantly communicating with them about where is the degree, what they need to ask for. We're checking slates and looking through that full posting process until completion. But it does make advising really, really difficult. And we recognize that. You can go to the next slide, Sam. So class schedules, after, me kind of telling you, it can be really challenging because you don't see proof of this degree for quite some time. Sam gave some great recommendations about how to work through the process of developing a schedule for students. And you very much with this population have to ignore a lot of that because they don't need math and English in terms of the general education sense. They may need some things for prerequisites, but kind of our standardized kind of list of how to work through a student's schedule really doesn't apply to this group. So oftentimes that priority is looking at the major that they've selected, how eligible are they for it? So if it's something that potentially they have been working on throughout their dual enrollment experience, they may be eligible to start jumping into those junior, senior courses. Others may have decided kind of late in the game that they want to pursue a major that they don't have any prerequisites for. And so that challenge is balancing, the prereqs that they need and how long it will take them to finish them. Likely with those students that are in a prerequisite track that are starting from the very beginning, they're going to have a lot of gaps in their schedule. And so it's figuring out what to do with those gaps. So kind of some of those initial recommendations are if they have other liberal studies requirements that they're not expected to be met, potentially those could be something that you could recommend. Engage 100 experience, absolutely recommend that. And that could potentially include a FIG or it could include something else. This group though, routinely, if I had to generalize the group, routinely feel I've done college before and I'm fine. And then quickly realize it's different. I'm having trouble, kind of finding my people, finding my niche, and Engage 100 opportunities can absolutely help them. They're still first-time college students. They're still young. They're still trying to find their way. Sometimes, though, you have to sell them a little bit more on why you think it'd be beneficial. And I think some of our newer opportunities that are rolling out will hopefully make it a little bit easier. Also, if their program requires a minor or has a language, trying to get that started early as well. The one thing that I would steer clear from, though, is especially if they are in a prerequisite-driven program that they are starting from the very beginning in terms of prereqs, or they want to pursue a limited enrollment program and they could have applied, but they missed the deadline. So they have potentially a semester or a year to wait for the application. Please don't tell them to take whatever or to take electives. I'm sure, meaning that in kind of an exciting sense of you have a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of things that you can do, but when you say take whatever or take electives, they feel like they're wasting their time. kind of be, why am I even doing this? I don't even need this class. I'm just doing it to get a scholarship. It really impacts kind of their perception of their class schedule. Spinning it into, you've got this flexibility to look at other interests, finding a way to integrate the parallel plan term, which with this group, you have to talk about really early. Or, maybe the program they're interested in doesn't have a minor requirement, but is there a minor or a certificate that can, expand their experience, help make them more marketable for whatever that long-term interest is. I know that at orientation, we have such a quick, short amount of time that we get to work with these students. So, if this conversation is really important to have early, if you can only kind of have it surface level at orientation, that's great. If you could also then offer them the opportunity to follow up afterward. But it is really tough on them when they're just told, take whatever, because we don't have a course called whatever. So please just trying to, kind of be mindful of that, and even kind of game plan early before you meet with them, even just kind of think about, okay, what are some courses that just maybe aren't part of our major, but, I think students in our program tend to be interested in and gravitate toward, and just kind of have those in your back pocket and accessible if you need to use them. Despite having all of this credits, their time to degree is very unique. Some are very set on, at least initially, I'm out of here in 1.5 years or 2 years, and I know what that next step is. And others would like to pretend that the AA experience never happened. And so trying to gauge that, you're likely probably going to get a sense of that when you meet them at orientation. Granted, that kind of evolves and changes as they get more acclimated and integrated to campus, but at least getting their initial perception of what they think their FSU experience is going to look like, they'll usually tell you pretty quickly. And then the other reality is the very committed person that you meet at orientation may become less committed to that plan, later in summer, in fall. They're going to have that same kind of indecisiveness. It's going to hit them at some point, like it hits every student. But sometimes I think they feel it's more of a immediate crisis because of all these policies and procedures that we have that impacts them earlier. The one policy and procedure that I have found that they freak out the most about, and it was brought up in a great question earlier, was excess credits. Because they see excess credits and get very, very concerned about how much they're bringing in, because they're not just coming in with 60 credits. It is 60, 70, 80, 90. We had a student once come in with dual enrollment over 120 hours. And none of it ended up really being used for the major that they wanted to pursue, which was interesting. But, with this group, they're so worried about that excess credit counter, and really being able to assure them that that dual enrollments, that test credit will not apply. It absolutely is still going to apply towards their total degree hours, as was mentioned earlier, but it is not going to count in that excess credit counter. Any questions? Or even feedback from those of you that have worked with this population before about kind of challenges you've experienced or ways that you've kind of helped them overcome some of their concerns. I appreciate the time then. Thank you, Sam.
Sorry, I tried to unmute myself there, and then I just ended up clicking through the last slides. Anyway, so fun fact, there is a conflicting meeting going on right now, and neither Danielle Porter nor Allison Peters were able to join us. They were going to reinforce the beauty of FIGS, engage 100 opportunities, and how to leverage the What's Left list. Fortunately, they were able to talk about all of this at the CIA meeting. I would encourage you all to, if you have not already, or if you did not get a chance to go to attend the CIA meetings, go to the YouTube videos, use the Orientation Advisor Handbook, also skim the It's All Academic publication. This will be kind of like a great foray into the engagement opportunities for incoming students. I know some of them are being based by major, some of them are a little bit more overarching. We have a, where is the Orientation Advisor Handbook? I just sent out the newest version of it to CIA, maybe like 10 minutes before this meeting started. and it is on my rather large to-do list to make sure it's in the CIA Canvas under orientation before the end of today. So that will be available there. It's a rather long PDF. It has all the FIG sections, LLC sections, LLC living learning communities, a lot of other do's and don'ts, how-tos, processes. I added some clarification on Alex in there, ENC 2135 equivalents, how to document your attendance in Canvas Connect. I know that was a separate document, but I just figured to add it. So it has a lot in there. So beyond leveraging the what's left list, and I know this was a conversation that Allison and Daniel wanted to kind of facilitate on how to best support students with a what's left list. I know it was a previous practice that advisors would send that to students. You know, I totally understand if it makes your job easier to just send them a what's left list, especially if sections and seats are scarce towards the end of orientation. I believe the conversation was but just be mindful of how much is posted on that. If you could try to like clean up some columns, or maybe they're trying to clean up some columns to make a student friendly version. Be mindful when you're sending that out to students if you choose to do so. You don't have to. Good contingency plans can just include additional courses, letting the student navigate Schedule Planner to just say like, hey, if you have a Y course suggested for them and say modern popular music and all the seats are filled, student wants to look around, they can use Schedule Planner. They will learn how to use it and search by liberal studies requirement. So you don't necessarily have to be prescriptive in saying you have to take MUH 2019, because you know that could just show up as an email later to say like, hey, you told me to take this and now it's full. And if you want to try to model, you know, searching for courses based on requirement rather than just prescribing specific courses, you could just tell them like, look for any course that satisfies Y. Same thing with any of the other gen ed requirements that may not have to do with your major. So any other questions? Because if not, I wanted to use some time to practice for those who are super new. Veterans, you are free to go. You have graduated this year's orientation advising training. It's been a pleasure. But if you are new and you want to get some kind of practice or clarification on how to actually go about building a schedule for a student, I have some time here and I'll be more than happy to throw out some student examples.